In some variations of the famous Sleeping Beauty fairy tale, the princess sleeps for 100 years without aging to be awakened by her foretold lover. Oh. Today, we have Neil Gaiman's Sandman, which in the Netflix series has sleepers falling asleep or else tortuously staying awake for over 100 years as well, all while Dream the Endless is indisposed. This streaming series is of course based on the graphic novel from 1988, which also has sleepers while sleeping, sleepwalking, etc. for decades for the same reason. But here's the thing, this sleeping sickness is based on a real disease which swept through the world for decades just about 100 years ago. My, that is a common number, and some think it could be back. But first, let's take a trip back in time. The year is 1917. The world is still in the middle of the flu pandemic or somewhere within the edges of it. Dr. Konstantin von Economo has described a new disease, Encephalitis lethargica, to the Vienna Society for Psychiatry and Neurology and published an article on it. Eventually, there would be so many cases that 9,000 plus more papers on encephalitis lethargica would appear. But to break down that name quickly, encephalitis is an inflammatory disease of the brain. And lethargica, of course, from lethargy or a lack of energy, a period of weakness. Now, encephalitis wasn't new, but this sleepy sickness variety was. And it had a much longer duration too. First appearing in 1916, things would start out with discomfort, low-grade fever symptoms, and possibly a headache. Then drowsiness and delirium, or being in and out of consciousness, disruptive or contrary sleep cycles, disorientation, and even hallucinations could set in. From this delirious state, the sleeper could be woken up relatively easily, but it could rapidly go south and lead to a quick death too. Assuming the sleeper could be easily awakened after the disease was at this stage, it would either progress into a coma or else the slow plod along to recovery. Such as it was, the cranial nerves might become paralyzed, causing droopy eyelids among other difficulties. These and other symptoms depended on where in the nervous system the inflammation was. Reported case numbers range from 500,000 to 1 million within a 20-year period. But of course, you may recognize some of these symptoms if you've seen or read The Sandman. You'll notice that Gaiman nails the different types of encephalitis lethargica, the forever sleeping type, the sleepwalker, the insomniatic, etc. And there are medical reasons for each of these varieties, mainly due to what nervous system functions the inflammation is interfering with. Let's take a look at some of the Sandman characters' experiences. In the case of Unity Kincaid, well, she's the forever sleeping type for sure. In the Sandman TV series, Unity falls asleep and just never wakes up. She has a full life in the dreaming, believing she even has a child, not getting into spoiler territory here. In the graphic novel, Unity first struggles to stay awake, then sleeps 20 plus hours per day, moving around a lot while sleeping, but then she just stops moving or waking at all. She outlives her family all while asleep and eventually gets sent to a nursing home to dreamily exist, until one day, decades or a century later depending, she wakes up. Here, Unity's case is the drowsy and delirious, followed by the extreme coma variety of encephalitis lethargica, mixed with a bit of artistic liberty, of course. One of the characters in the novel is actually clinically diagnosed with encephalitis lethargica, Ellie Marston from Toronto. Her mother would read her Through the Looking Glass before bed, but after the dreaming is in danger in 1916, Ellie, it seems, falls asleep regularly throughout the day at the wrong times. One day, she just doesn't wake up. She's alive, but asleep. Decades later, 1939, she's in a charity ward, having only woken twice in 10 years, and believes she's still the age she was when she fell asleep. Years later, she's officially diagnosed and comes to 4 or 5 times a year, asking for a story. When she at last truly wakes up, she's finally released from Wonderland. Some cases of encephalitis lethargica are hyperkinetic, as opposed to the akinetic or non-moving literary cases I just covered. Hyperkinetic cases are where the body was constantly moving, seizing even. It also ties in with the insomniatic version of encephalitis lethargica, which, while it seems like the opposite of sleepy sickness, is still one of the 28 types of this disease. And from the Sandman graphic novel, 2 characters show off this symptom: Stephen Wasserman and Daniel Bustamante. To be fair, Stephen has a lot going on. Enlisted at 14, he's on the front lines of the war and suffering from PTSD. He's basically living a nightmare during his waking hours. Once the dreaming world is essentially under attack too, he just doesn't sleep, can't sleep. Doctors comment that this is a variety of PTSD that they haven't encountered before. We assume he'd stay awake as long as Dream was captive, but unfortunately, only a few years of this waking nightmare are all Stephen can handle before deciding he can no longer live. He ends things at 16 years old, well before the rest of the fictional world wakes decades later. The other character from the graphic novel, Daniel Bustamante, is perhaps the most artistic liberty. He showcases a variety of encephalitis lethargica symptoms, and his sickness seems tied directly to the hopes and safe spaces he made for himself in the dreaming, which is now in danger. He's afraid to sleep now. According to the graphic novel, Daniel is one of the last to succumb to the sleeping sickness in 1926, which happens to be when the real-life cases were starting to wind down. He's stuck in sleep mode. His family misses him, but later walks around like a zombie, constantly sleepwalking. He eats when fed, like most encephalitis lethargica patients, but just wanders around in a dream state. Eventually, he wakes up with no side effects once Dream is free. Many IRL people were not so lucky. Because of the after effects of encephalitis lethargica, many affected were left catatonic after their bout with it. This state also appears like awake but asleep, which makes the sickness feel like it's going on much longer too. Gaiman is very true to the original form of the disease, with an obvious exception: the duration of the course of the disease. We're dealing with artistic and supernatural forces, so suspension of disbelief is to be expected after all. The Netflix adaptation of the graphic novel is very spot on, so it kept the artistically long disease period too. I believe they changed the duration of Morpheus's captivity so that it would end in our current modern time, 2022, as opposed to 1988, which would have been the current time when the graphic novel was published. Either way you slice it, decades or a century of sleep or insomnia is a long time. People wouldn't naturally last that long, and they didn't. Those who did survive were sometimes left with lingering and permanent neurological sequelae that rendered them nearly akinetic or unable to move. The 1991 movie Awakenings, based on a 1973 book, based on a doctor's idea to treat catatonic encephalitis lethargica survivors with the same medicine used for Parkinson's, as the two share some similarities, showcases this. It's a very interesting movie in which the long-time catatonic sleepers are finally starting to wake up to a very new world. But something of caution though. Apparently there was more than the altruistic motive of, quote, cure the disease among the American neurology practitioners back in the 1900s. The second motive, of course, was to increase their prominence in medical science. As a result, it's believed that there were more diagnoses of encephalitis lethargica than there should have been, and this perhaps artificial increase was noted during the actual epidemic itself, which was from 1916 to the 1930s. Other sources say that the cases were underreported even if they were overdiagnosed, so the range of cases is anywhere between 500,000 and to over 1 million. However, it must be said that this encephalitis lethargica epidemic was absolutely concerning, whatever the numbers ended up being. And cases of it still pop up from time to time. While little is known about how this is spread and the cause of it, there is some concern between it and our current pandemic. Many believe that encephalitis lethargica was caused by a virus, like the then raging flu, triggering something in the patient's bodies. This is remarkably similar to our current world situation and the long-term symptoms that can persist after initial infection, as well as those that show up weeks or months later. Encephalitis lethargica, like all illnesses, is a morbid topic. It left such a mark that it inspired books, a play, a movie, a ballet, an opera, which ironically was delayed to 2022 because of the current pandemic, a graphic novel, and now a TV series. It's pretty cool that the Sandman uses this unexplainable real-life event to start the story. If only it were truly an endless trap, our current world might make a little more sense. But it's so good to see you. Do be sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next curiously creepy video. Goodbye.